I think this is why so many women are suffering with menopause, is because we didn't learn our evolutionary design. And the evolutionary design of menopause is actually one where you are taking an energy system inside your body that was going towards reproduction, and it's now changing that energy system, and it's going to put it towards better fitness, and this is all scientifically proven, better fitness, better cognition, and better ability to connect and socialize with others. The whole purpose of menopause is a transformation into the happiest, most intelligent version of you possible. But because you didn't stop to slow down in order to honor that transition, you are like pushing through, you're not resting, you're eating the wrong foods, you're not prioritizing sleep, you're doing all the things that work against your body. And so you're irritable, you're gaining weight, you have hot flashes, you can't remember anything because you have not worked and adapted to the hormonal system that's transitioning in you into this incredible version of you. And I really believe we've missed the mark on what the body is always doing the right thing at the right time.
I want to get your perspective on this in regards to menopause, because you spoke to it as this transformation and initiation.
Yeah.
And I looked into this recently, and I'm just curious. I don't know how strong the validity of it is, but there's about 3 species that have menopause, right?
Yeah.
There's orcas.
Yep.
Elephants they have like a social menopause, but I think it's a certain pilot whale.
Pilot whales, yeah.
And it's interesting because those are 3 species, including us, that rely on their intellect and information passed on for survival.
Yeah.
And in the process of, because women have the incredible superpower of bearing life that we men don't have, right? And so why would at a certain stage of life that turn off? Why would that go offline? And there's this perspective that in the transformation, in the initiation, it's extending their lifespan because birth is a kind of risky thing, in the perspective of evolution and survival. So by extending the lifespan of the female, they become kind of the information bearers, the wisdom elders, and in many ways. And I know you're so passionate about how we have just completely culturally misunderstood menopause and the woman's process and all of that. And so what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that you've researched this. You're looking at the same stuff I'm looking at.
Okay, cool.
So it's called the grandmother hypothesis. And the idea was, if you go back into the primal days, what happened was around cave life, you had the men that would go out and hunt. You had the woman who was bearing children, delivering children, caring for an infant. And then you had the older children that were not strong enough to go hunt. They might be toddlers, or they didn't have the ability to go out and make a big kill because the hunters that were going off were off for days, and they were going for large animals. And so somebody had to take care of cave life. So it was the grandmother, the post-menopausal woman, that took care of cave life. And she did that by taking this renewed energy source, because she wasn't reproducing, and she would go and hunt for tubers. And she would pull tubers out of the ground and bring them back because the hunters were off for days. And she would bring it back to nourish the family and make sure that the mom-bearing children had nourishment so that she could stay alive, so she could continue to perpetuate the species, so that the species that we would live as species. If the grandmother didn't transform into this new version of herself, we literally, you and I, would not be sitting here right now, because the hunters were gone for days. And when they came back with a kill, they only came back with a kill 3% of the time. So it was the grandmother that was able to keep sustenance together for those around the whole cave life. And in order to do that, there had to be a transformation of her in these non-reproductive time. So she became this elder leader that kept everybody alive. Now, the orca whales, they exhibit this. There's really interesting research there that the orca whales spend 30% of their life post-reproductive. We spend 42.5% of our life post-reproductive. That is not a mistake. It's not like, oh, whoops, We're just going to let you live for 42%, of your life without a reproductive cycle. You are needed. You are important. There was a transformation that put you into a leadership position to keep the species alive. But we don't do that now. We toss our menopausal women aside. We have women that are trying to freeze their faces so they don't look old, because God forbid, if I'm old in this culture and I look like I'm old, then I become invisible. And so what I'm trying to do, and I'm passionate about this because this is my next book, is I'm trying to show that actually we need to be talking about menopause as an evolutionary redesign where we are actually coming into a leadership position. And if you look at like the stuff like Lisa Mosconi has done a ton of brain research on women going through that process, what she finds is that the neurons in our brain that actually are like the people-pleasing neurons that are like, I want to make sure you're happy, which so many women have, those prune away. And the neurons that come in that are like, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in because I'm a leader. I was meant to be a leader. I'm supposed to be a leader. So when you talk to a postmenopausal woman, she'll tell you what she thinks. Like she's not holding back because her brain reorganized itself for this new leadership position. But we don't honor it like that. And I really want to change that. I think, the most common time for a woman to commit suicide is between 45 and 55. And I think in this, I call it the brain remodel project. As the brain is remodeling itself, she doesn't understand herself. And we have a culture that's like, you have a wrinkle, you're old, you're not helpful anymore. And our culture doesn't lift up our wise elders. So if we really change that, and Desmond Tutu said, if you want to heal a world, let the women lead. And I would add, if you want to heal the world, let the postmenopausal women lead. Because they have the energy resources, they have the brain that's changed itself to be able to heal communities of people, because that's how we were designed. That's the whole purpose of menopause.
So that's so powerful. I can just feel the power and impact. You're already doing it. I know you say this is your intention with your next book, but just by speaking it, how passionate you are right now, I know this is impacting so many people. I've seen a lot of that journey as well with my mom and women in my life. And yeah, it's just such a shame that we have this cultural misunderstanding and view something that's actually a feature as a bug. Yeah. And it's that transition from the maiden to the mother to the crone where the wisdom is really held. And
do you know what the crone stands for?
I don't know.
It translates to mean crown.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
But we have it like as an old lady.
Right.
With like, like a witchy old lady is the crown. Like she's like, gonna come after you. Like a character, a Disney character. But actually, Clarissa Estes Pinkola, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it is an incredible American author and a philosopher as well. She is like the crone is the crown. That is where our postmenopausal women need to sit. Is that with this, like we should be putting crowns on us and being like, you have wisdom. Your brain can actually, like the amygdala for postmenopausal women, instead of looking for fight or flight, the amygdala turns towards empathy. So the brain changes that are happening mixed with the evolutionary design, mixed with the energy redistribution, makes the postmenopausal woman, in my opinion, the wisest of all humans. And we have to stop tossing her aside.
Yeah, us men don't have it. Interesting how there's not a grandfather hypothesis.
There's not a grandfather hypothesis. And actually, you're meant to keep...
Of course, we serve our own function.
Yeah, and you're meant to like keep impregnating. Like men can stay fertile for years and years and years. So there is a difference between men and women as far as our functionality as we get older. Like your reproductive system doesn't stop, ours does. So if you go back and you think about the evolutionary design of that, why would whoever made us, this whatever energy, whatever your belief system is that made us, why would this energy create something different for menopausal women? And I am, the more I study this, the more I'm clear it's because we were meant to be cultural leaders. But we live in a culture that glamorizes beauty and glamorizes youth. I'm not an anti-aging fan. I'm actually a pro-aging fan because I think anti-aging says, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Pro-aging says, I'm curious about who I'm going to be there. One of my other really interesting things that I've been thinking about is there is a feminist philosopher. Her name is Carol Gilligan. And in the 80s, she studied the differences between the way boys and girls asked for what they wanted. And an example would be that if you went to an 11-year-old boy and girl and you said, what do you want to eat? They would both tell you exactly what they want to eat. Now, fast forward to them both going through puberty. You come back 2 years later, you ask them the same question. The boy says, I want a hamburger. And the girl says, I don't know, what are you going to eat? When our hormones come in, our brains as females start working from right to left, and we become relational creatures. And everything we are doing is adapting to the relationship of another human, adapting to the relationship of a patriarchal society. We are constantly making sure everybody is okay. When we go into menopause, those hormones go away. I strongly believe we hear our own voice again. And all of a sudden, all the ways we've betrayed ourselves, it's actually a return home to ourselves if we allow it to be that.
And there is the cultural kind of programming and viewing of, especially more heavily women, that their value is based and derived out of the value they bring to others.
Yep.
And you're speaking to this like sovereignty and reclaiming, especially post-menopausal, where it's your value does shift in relation to others, but it's also, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on value irrespective of doing anything for society or others, but it's inherent, as who you are.
Well, I think we have to value ourselves first. I think that's the problem is that, for women, we've gotten our value from whatever you look beautiful, you were so helpful. Carol Gilligan actually says that in the 1980s, the messaging for women was you should be selfless. And so we only got our value from externals, validation. So for women, I think one of the challenges we have is that in order to create value and to be visible again, we need to actually love ourselves first. And we need to get to know ourselves first and have a relationship with ourselves first, which is why I like know thyself. Which is why we're in the know thyself land.
We arrived. Here we are.
I'm speaking your language. But it's everything you're teaching.
Uh-huh.
But I know it's important for both men and women, but it breaks my heart how many women arrive into their 50s with no understanding of who they are without adapting to everybody else's needs. And that is what I'm going to change with this next book. That's what I'm writing about right now.
I'm excited. I'm so pumped for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have you been on your own journey with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell?
Would have never guessed, Mindy.
Yeah. I mean, I let's see. In full transparency, as a doctor, I had a very, very busy clinic. Everything, I would spend my whole day catering to my patients, and then I'd come home and spend my whole night being a mom. I never thought about what I wanted. I thought about what everything else needed to be. And then the pandemic hit, and I had this little YouTube channel that was growing very quickly, and it took off during the pandemic. And all of a sudden, and from doing YouTube, all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, like there's a whole online world here that I can take what I'm teaching in my clinic and I can help more people. So again, always about the other person. And I actually ended up closing my clinic and writing books and doing videos. And as I was going through that process, I was getting more and more depressed. And I was becoming more and more frustrated about like, oh my God, if on paper, everything in my life looks amazing. I got an incredible book deal. My Fast Like a Girl has sold over 800,000 copies in 2 years. Like there was so much goodness out there, but I wasn't happy. And I think something happens with social media too. I was super nervous that the likes and the follows, I didn't want to become addicted to that. I didn't want to be I had a lot of people wanted me on their podcast. And it was like, I don't want to get attached to that. And so I had to go within. And for the last 2 years, I've been doing a lot of therapy, a lot of plant medicine, and a lot of journey inward, and discovering that I never gave oxygen to my own voice. And the catalyst was actually a friend of mine, this is what a good friend does, said to me one day, you know what's really interesting about you, Mindy? You're so worried about disappointing everybody else, but you have no problem disappointing yourself. Mm-hmm. And so who you're seeing right now is somebody who is taking the journey back to herself and learning to say, no, I don't want to do that for you. That doesn't work for me. And I'm spending a lot more time by myself, getting to know myself. I'm really trying to ask myself, if I'm in a group of people, instead of going, well, what does everybody else want? How do I make this really good for everybody else? I'm asking myself first, what do I want? And I'm just trying to reprogram myself so that I put myself at the center. And it's harder said than done because you're going to disappoint a lot of people. And I have, but not myself. So I am this next book. I am this next book. I am coming in. I'm 2 years post-menopausal. And I'm coming into the best version of myself because it's the most authentic version, the version that never got oxygen before. And I'm now giving her oxygen.
It's
cool.
I love this.
Yeah,
this is so
cool.
So powerful, so potent. And it just feels like it's just so widespread how so many women struggle with this. Yeah. Like it's across the board.
Yeah.
Like unanimously.
I had somebody this summer, I took the summer off and I just kind of let it slow down so I could get this to understand myself. And somebody said to me, well, what are you going to do with your days? And I was like, I can't tell you because I've never asked what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so it took time. It's like fasting. It took time away from the busy schedule to wake up in the morning and go, okay, if nobody else was in my life today, what am I going to do? If I didn't have any Zoom calls or things to do, what am I going to do? And the first week of asking myself that, I cried every day because there was no answer. Nothing came to me. Because I'd never, at 55 years old, I'd never asked myself every single day, what are you doing today, Mindy? What do you want to do? It was always what was required of me to do. It's fascinating to get to 55 and realize that.
I just want to give you a big hug. And also my mom too. I just feel like her so much is just same time frame as you also going through this and discovering, and what do you wish people going through this or that one day will go through this transition of entering kind of that dark period where it's you're unsure, there's this familiarity with always just living your life for other people's needs and not really discovering your own or prioritizing your own self-love. What would you say are the most important things that you wish you 2 years ago would have had?
They're baby steps. First you have to ask yourself, what do I want? And then you also have to catch yourself adapting. I'm just full transparency, I've been married to the same man since I was 21. So he is getting a different version of me now than the 21-year-old that he married and the mother of his children. And so I've had to have some hard conversations with him about I need space because I can't even hear my own voice. So I'm going to need to take a couple of days by myself. That was I needed to remove myself from environments where I was a professional adapter. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I had to hang around other people that actually supported their own personal journey and that other women that had been through. This is the wise elder. So a lot of my friends that were 10 years ahead of me, I was like, tell me how you handled this situation. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations with women that are in their 60s that I say, I can't do it anymore. I can't please everybody anymore. I can't betray myself anymore. And then I say, am I crazy? And then I have women reflect back to me. So I've created a really cool group of women that will reflect back to me. Like, nope, I went through that. Nope, you're not crazy. The Okinawa women that we put up on a pedestal all the time as being their longevity, they live forever. One of the things they do is they create a moai. And a moai is where they gather women together. And in their case, it's women who have lost their husbands, but they share resources. So one woman might have a home, so they go live there. Another woman maybe has a meal, so they go there. Another woman has wisdom, so they go there. But they come together and create a support system. I think that's what women need to do when we go into those postmenopausal years. When we start coming back to our true authentic self, we need to surround ourselves by other women who are like cheering us on, that are supporting us, that have been through that process. And then you have to there's a little bit of a dark night of the soul, and honoring that that's okay, that you are letting go of the worth you got from pleasing everybody else. And you're stepping in to pleasing yourself. And that can be an addiction that's really hard to overcome. But again, support helps. And just like you're detoxing when you fast, you are detoxing from the people pleasing. So knowing when it gets, oh God, the boundaries get so hard to set. I'm going to upset these people. I'm going to say something that's going to really upset everybody, but it's the right thing for me to do. You have to be willing to do that over and over again until all you want to do is please yourself.